Howdy, Facebook Live. Sean Yesner here. I'll get my thing here going. Sean Yesner here with Rich Ficca, owner of Florida West Insurance, and we really appreciate you guys tuning in here to a behind the scenes. Did I say that wrong?
You did.
What did I say?
Florida West.
Did I say Florida West? I am so sorry. Florida Coastal Insurance. Wow, I'm just going on autopilot, aren't I? So luckily we are not recording the podcast. This is all preserved on Facebook Live, showing that I screwed up. But when you guys go and listen to the podcast, you're not going to hear any of this part of it. You won't hear any of me screwing up, and that's why I like to give you the behind-the-scenes look so that you guys know. I'm sure everybody knows I'm not perfect.
Absolutely.
And I just proved it. So if you are ready, Rich.
I am.
Give me 1 second. Let me call up the recording stuff. And okay. And typically I have a lot of my staff jump on, and so it's cool. I get to see them not working, watching me record this video. So, okay, if you're ready. So on this week's episode of the Crushing Debt podcast, I am happy to have Rich Ficca, owner of Florida Coastal Insurance, with me. So welcome to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, and like I said in the introduction, I've got a really good friend of mine here on the podcast today. He is a referral partner of mine. He is a mentor of mine. He is a mentee of mine. He is a friend of mine. He owns Florida Coastal Insurance Agency. He's been in the insurance industry now, in the Florida insurance industry now for over 21 years, 15 of that as an advanced instructor providing insurance education to other agents. He's an expert on agency valuations, and he's grown Florida Coastal Insurance to be a multi-million-dollar insurance agency strictly on referrals. He doesn't do any traditional advertising anymore. Everything is strictly by referral. And so I am happy to have this week my guest, Mr. Richard Ficca, on the Crushing Debt podcast. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks for having me, Sean. I appreciate it.
So one thing that is important, especially as we get into the summer months, is hurricane season. As an FSU fan, hopefully hurricane season is over really early this year. But in terms of the actual storms, I thought I'd have you on the show to talk a lot about hurricane preparedness. So as a property casualty agent, as an insurance agent, what are your thoughts on hurricane preparedness?
Sean, I'll tell you the truth. I, like almost everybody else in Florida, never believed in the big storm. Hurricane preparedness for me was literally maybe a tank of gas, and I'd pick up a 32-ounce Gatorade on my way by. It wasn't until I happened to be in New Orleans in the Mississippi area right after Hurricane Katrina that I started to take a different look on it. Really quickly, I'll tell you a story. When you're in one of those places after a storm, there's X's on every home. And in the 4 quadrants of the X, it's who did the inspection, what company it was. But then the other 2 really bothered me. It was how many animals they found in the home, and then the bottom one was how many people they found.
Like abandoned or deceased?
Deceased. And so sometimes the number there'd be like A for alive and 2, and then a number for D, and how many they found passed. It completely, as I saw that, and then I was in Biloxi, Mississippi, and saw the roads. Best way I can describe it to you is imagine how the far north looks during the snow, where they literally take the snow plows and clean the road with these huge piles of snow on the side. That was literally the debris of homes. It was just this charred mess of metal and wood and steel. But then every now and then you'd see a stuffed animal or a picture frame. And ever since then, I take and I offer hurricane preparedness as a much more serious thing for what we do.
Well, I don't know if I've ever told you this or not before, but I grew up in Miami. So I'm a true Florida native. I was born here in Tampa, but I grew up down in Miami. And I went to Florida State for undergrad in 1990. And so I remember being in Tallahassee before the school year started. I was actually in the band. So we're in preseason camp here in the band, warming up, learning our shows, learning our pregame shows, auditioning, all that kind of stuff. And I had friends of mine in 1992. I had friends of mine come up to me and say, hey, man, Miami is gone. I said, well, what do you mean Miami is gone? They said, Miami doesn't exist anymore. Well, they were talking about Andrew.
Sure.
Andrew had come through. And so I immediately jumped on the phone. It took me until that night to finally get a hold of my parents. And I talked to my mom and I said, hey, I'm coming down. And she said, no, you're not. And I said, what do you mean? No, I'm not. I want to come down. I want to help you. I want to help my, dad. I want to help my little sister. What can I do to come down to help? She said, Sean, it's a war zone down here. There's no trees. They're all gone. Everything is leveled. Now, luckily, my parents' house only sustained minimal damage. They lost electricity for a couple weeks. We had a pool cage in the backyard that had become a pretzel inside the pool. So it was a little bit of damage to the roof, not much. The house was still standing. Some minor damage, but all in all, everyone there was safe. My parents were in an area of Miami called Kendall, where Andrew really impacted was down in Homestead.
Sure.
And I remember going down to Miami that year because we played Miami in the Orange Bowl. We played in the Orange Bowl that year, and I remember it just being, it looked like the zombie apocalypse. It was insane.
When I went up to Biloxi after Katrina, and I went all through that area, but I was in Biloxi mostly. I actually was helping out a couple of pediatricians who were kind of spearheading efforts to get food to families and elderly. And we were literally, you say war zone, and I don't like to wax poetic about military metaphors, but literally they were bringing food in on Hueys and Blackhawks, and we were running up under the helicopters and grabbing the food and then having to take them and deliver them. It truly is, you're right. And so, again, as Floridians, we've been very, very spoiled, and I want to knock on some wood here that, we've avoided the big one mostly. Andrew obviously comes to mind. Ivan did some damage. The other 5 storms in 14 months did some damage.
Right.
But that Hurricane Katrina type event, that Cat 5 that hits a metropolitan statistical area, God forbid here in the Tampa Bay area, because we are so close to seawater, to sea level, it'll get us worse.
And I didn't even realize, off on a tangent, here I am mentioning war zone. I've never been in the military. You were absolutely in the military. Sure. So thank you for your service, and thank you for allowing me to use the analogy of war zone, having never been in a war zone before. So thank you for that. So what are some things we can do from an insurance perspective, from a loss perspective? What are some things we can do to be more prepared for when the storm comes?
Sure. So everybody who's lived in Florida has seen a hurricane preparedness list. If you haven't, there's 2 apps that I recommend right off the top of that you should put on your phone. The first is FEMA has an app. FEMA's app is great. It'll help you to keep up on current data. They'll put food locations, water locations. If you have your phone and you can get to it, that FEMA app is tremendous. There's also an app called Ready Kit Florida. Again, most of us have seen hurricane preparedness list, but Ready Kit Florida is just an app that you literally go down the list and check, I've bought this, I need this, I've bought this, I need this. And so both of those I do recommend. They're both free apps in the Droid store. I'm sure they're on the iPhone store as well. And so those are just, first things first. Give yourself the Ready Kit app helps you to get ready. The FEMA app helps you to function during the unfortunate event. So there's 2 things I recommend. But the other thing is we do live in 2017. Data's cheap these days. Information's easy to store. So to update the list, and obviously, for example, anybody would tell you, make sure you have food, make sure you have water. Right. But I want to go over some things if it's okay with you, that 2017 is kind of better. The first is, prior to a storm, everybody here has a camera on everybody has a camera on their phone these days. I strongly recommend to go into every room of your home. Take a picture standing, looking in the middle of the room at one of the walls. So for instance, if you're standing at 12 o'clock, take a picture. Turn quarter face, so now you're at 3 o'clock, take a picture. And do that in literally every room of your home. Do it in your closets, do it in your drawers, do it in your garage. And then what you do is put that picture up on your computer. On the top half, have the picture. On the bottom half, start listing everything in the picture, when approximately you bought it, and approximately what you paid for it. What you've now done is you've created an inventory list that has all the information that we use in our industry to figure out depreciation.
Right.
And what happens is when there's now a storm and an adjuster is dealing with, he has 140 files on his desk, and one of the files comes to him and has electronic images of everything in the home that absolutely itemizes and makes his life easy, you'll be the first person to get your check out of those 140.
Yeah, and they always used to say you want to take a newspaper and you want to have a picture of the newspaper, but even as I'm listening to you talking, you don't even need the newspaper anymore because the phones will electronically time and date stamp when you took the picture.
Sure, and most people should have, and again, we're not here to talk about replacement costs versus actual cash value.
Right.
But to your listeners, I would urge you, pull out your homeowner's policy, and one of the things I would never sell to my family member, is actual cash value on a policy, because you don't want to have to go to a thrift store to buy a used couch with the money that they give you for the used loss. You want to get the money for a new couch so that you just walk into the furniture store and buy a new one. And so really the main thing you're doing is just justifying values, and the information is just powerful. But I tell people, put, approximate dates. And again, Kentucky windage, May of 15 or 2015 or whatever the case.
Right. Okay. So what else can we update from up to 2017?
All right, so your personal information. Everybody has access to a thumb drive these days. Obviously, water doesn't do well with paper. So the idea that you're going to carry a folder through a tsunami is probably not the smartest thing in the world. But what I do recommend everybody does from a risk management standpoint is take all of your birth certificates of you, your spouse, your kids, take all of your titles and registrations, take all of your insurance policies, including, unfortunately, the life insurance policies.
Right.
Take any living will type documents. All of those things that you have that you normally would have a paper copy of, put a copy of it on a thumb drive. And now that thumb drive can very quickly function to help you out. I actually use for myself, I have a terabyte drive that I use, because not only do I store all my important documents that way, I store all my photos.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't think about it, but I would be far more crushed if I lost some of the photos of my son turning 1.
My wife lost her phone and didn't back up any of the pictures, and that was pretty devastating. Luckily, I had my pictures, so we only lost about half.
Sometimes you can restore a sense of normalcy faster when you can kind of have a little bit of that past to fall back on. So I just tell people, those are the type of things. And a terabyte drive these days is about $50.
Yeah.
And a thumb drive is about $3. So between the two, but I strongly recommend also in that drive, make sure that you have any of your medical information, your dosages, what you take drug-wise, all that. You can do it in an Excel spreadsheet, copies of your passports, leases to homes, things like that. So any of those important documents, just scan and copies, make sure you have them. So that'd be another one I would tell you.
Okay. Any others?
Yeah, we live in the cell phone world. And with the cell phone world, risk management, is what I do. Obviously, you want to make sure you bring your cell phone and your charger with you. But I recommend 2 more things. One, if you want to be the coolest guy in the hurricane, buy a $4 power strip, the lightest, cheapest one you can get your hands on. So now when you end up somewhere that you can actually access power, and for you to plug your phone in, you have to unplug somebody else's, it's not going to go over very well.
No.
But when you can plug yours in and 5 other people's at the same time, you're going to become a hero. So again, not only have a cell phone charger, but one of those little cheap $4 plugs I recommend. And then on top of it, cell phone batteries now, everything from the $10 ones that will give you an hour or 2 of life up to they have batteries that you can do that are $40, $50 that'll actually give you 6 or 7 days worth of charge.
Yeah, we talked about that in terms of now I'm starting to see those as promotional products, promotional items, companies using those external cell phone batteries to promote their businesses. So we are probably at the end of our time, but is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, just when they tell you to leave. Don't be the tough guy.
I've seen plenty of those in my day. The guys that, let's go surfing. Yeah.
And I'll be sending you a copy of our hurricane preparedness guide.
Okay.
And you'll be able to share with your listeners.
Cool. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you to maybe have you review their policy, or if they have questions about stuff we've talked about or hurricane preparedness, I also know that you do auto policies, and you're actually our agent for the law firm's liability policy, not the errors and omissions, but the liability policy. So if someone has questions and wants to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
So you can go to our website, floridacoastalinsurancaagency.com, www.floridacoastalinsurancaagency.com. My email is richard@floridacoastalinsurancaagency.com. And our office number, I should say, is 727-569-6000. And my direct extension is 101. I'd love a chance to talk to your listeners.
Cool. So for everyone listening to the podcast, I will post all of that in the notes, so you can go to the notes and see all of that. I do appreciate everybody listening. I want to take the last couple of seconds. I know I promised to give all the listeners just a little crushing debt tip at the end of every episode. This week's tip, I wrote a blog a couple of weeks back about 1099 preparedness. And so I think the best thing there is to, if you get a 1099 from any source, whether it be from a bank or from a creditor or from somebody, take that 1099, give me a call, give a CPA a call, give a tax attorney a call, because you don't want to mess with potentially having to owe the IRS money. People think that their creditors don't have to send them a 1099. If a creditor eliminates or waives or forgives more than $600 of debt, they are legally required to issue a 1099. So if you get one, give somebody a call. Let us see if we can figure out how to handle it. That is the tip for this week's episode. Please, please, please give Richard a call if you have any questions on insurance, on hurricane preparedness, on property and casualty insurance, car insurance, homeowners insurance, all of that type of stuff. Please give Richard a call. And then if you have questions about losses, give me a call. If something happens where you suffer an insurance loss, give me a call. I can help you with that. So thank you again for tuning in to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, and we look forward to talking to you in next week's episode. Done.
There you go.
Less than 15 minutes. You don't even realize when you're talking that it's, and I do it too. And I look at it, I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, I thought that was good. Let's turn your mic off. You know what I realized? I'm like this, you're like this. That may be where some of the sound might go.
So on this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast, I am happy to have Rich Ficca, owner of Florida Coastal Insurance, with us. So welcome to this week's episode of the Crushing Debt Podcast. My name is Sean Yesner, and like I said in the introduction, I've got a really good friend of mine here on the podcast today. He is a...
Okay, so before we do that, hey, Facebook Live. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's recording, behind-the-scenes recording. Thank you, Richard, for being here. And we will go back on Facebook Live the next time I do a Crushing Debt podcast. Look for us on Facebook. Engage with me on social media. I really appreciate all of your support, and we will see you next time. And